Alrighty, so today I want to talk to you about one of the narcissist's most powerful manipulation tactics. And this is something that I have recently been able to observe and understand in greater detail uh, since I've become awakened. And so the tactic is their ability to use story as a weapon. They can weaponize a story against you. And so ultimately what they're trying to do is manipulate you through telling these delusional stories. And people really underestimate how powerful stories are. And, there are good ways to tell a story and there are bad ways to tell a story. And the common characteristic with a good story that really pulls you in is the storyteller's ability to emotionally connect with you while telling the story. And this is a skill that all good storytellers have. And this is a skill that the narcissists have. And this is the main technique coupled with telling these stories, which, some can be true, some are lies. From what I've gathered and observed, it's a lot of delusion and just flat out lying. But what they do is they weave emotion into the story, and that emotion is what hooks you. And I'll give you a couple examples. So I have been dealing with my nurse mom for 40 years. It's only recently, within the last couple of years, that I've woken up to her whole program of being a demonic nurse. So it was interesting when this is an example of her using her delusional story to emotionally manipulate someone. So her whole theme throughout her entire life, and I've been able to recall this because she just really drilled this point in ever since I was a kid, as long as I've known her, and she still does it to this day, is that she's the victim. That's her whole thing, is she's been screwed over her entire life, and that she is the victim of everyone else screwing her over. That is the common theme of this woman's life, and she will take that to the grave, I swear. So any opportunity to reinforce that narrative, she will take. So this is really interesting. I was fixing up the guest house on the property we share with them, and I'd hired my friend to help me do some of the remodel work. So my nurse mom has never met my friend. And so he shows up and we're working, we take a break, we're standing outside talking, and she walks up. And this is before I knew anything about the nurse. I knew she was weird, but more was to be revealed in the future. But I had no idea. So a normal interaction when we first meet someone is like, oh, hey, how's it going? You talk about the weather, you ask how they're doing, just standard stuff. But no. So she lays into this big story about how she goes to the grocery store and she's shopping in the grocery store and she's been there and she can't find what she's looking for and the grocery store is so big and it's confusing, and she comes to the cash register to pay, and she goes to write a check, and the person at the cash register says, "Oh, we don't accept checks," and she perceives that they didn't like her because she looked a certain way. She said, "Well, they're just being mean to me, and they don't like me because I'm a hippie," and the way they handled it was, I'm just a poor hippie chick." And she goes on to explain in detail how, because she's a poor hippie chick, this person at the cash register doesn't accept checks. And I'm thinking, like, man, no one uses checks anymore. And I understand, like, a lot of checks are fraudulent. But the whole theme of her story, when she's first meeting my friend, is that how she's screwed over, everyone screws her over, and she's a victim of everyone screwing her over. And I didn't realize it at the time when I was hearing it, but now I can think about it now, and I remember really clearly now that it's like, okay, so she was emotionally manipulating my friend by making him feel bad for her because of this emotional experience, and typically people can relate because they've had a similar experience, like, that emotional tactic works because they'll have you remember feelings that you've had, like maybe my friend had experienced when when people judged him. That's a common thing. So he can easily connect with what the narcissist is saying, because he's experienced those emotions. So it makes the power of the story even deeper, because he's feeling what she's felt. And that's really how emotion works, because when you're being told the story and you've lived that story is very real for you, so you can connect with that deeper. So she used that on my friend to just reinforce, I'm a victim, everyone screws me over. And ultimately, she may have been playing my friend, because my friend is a very skilled carpenter, and he's like a good carpenter, he's a good plumber, he's a good electrician, he's like an all-around jack of trades, and when it comes to like homes and remodels and building homes and all that. And she might have been long-term thinking like, oh, I'm going to emotionally manipulate this guy so he feels bad about me, and then I'm going to try to like get something out of him. Because my folks live in this like POS trailer, and they're always falling apart, and you're constantly having to fix them up. So she could have had ulterior motives behind the fact that she comes with the emotionally manipulative story to manipulate my friend, to in turn get him to do some cheap work for them, because she was seeing the work he was doing with me, and we're doing a really good job fixing the place up. So I don't know, that's just all conjecture, but it shows the point of how these people use stories to manipulate you. And her stories are, maybe there is some truth in there, but for the most part, they're fully delusional. In all actuality, the way she has chosen to live her life, ever since she really decided to commit to this kind of behavior, is, she's really done what she's talking about to other people. She manipulates other people, and she's very judgmental, and she kind of embodies the exact thing that she's trying to convince people that's happening to her. And this is from what I've observed, the way she treats people. So it's a really interesting tactic, and it's very powerful, because they choose to deploy this when they either want something, and this is from what I've observed. So she obviously wanted something from my friend. Now this other example is this is when I called her out of being a demon narc. I said, you're a demon narc, and we either have mutual respect, or there's no communication, and you're shelved, like you're done. Which obviously these people can't respect you, so that's not going to happen. So I called the demon narc out, and she goes into fucking attack mode, crazy mode. And what is her biggest weapon? It's her story. So she lays into starting to talk about, she makes up a delusional story in her mind, and she goes on the rampage to tell this story to whoever she can. So the first person she tells the story to is the enabler, which is my dad. And so these are boomers. My parents are boomers. And the thing about boomer narcissists, which is really interesting compared to like a younger narcissist, is, these boomers have been narcissists for their whole life. And, as they age out, they're going to have less and less supply and people around them that they can just treat shitty and abuse, because you can only run through so many people before there's just no one left. So for my boomer narc mom, her supply is very limited, and I have been her main supply my whole fucking life. For 40 fucking years, I was this woman's just fucking whipping post. So when I pulled the plug on her, man, she went into like withdrawal. And so the only supply she really had left was the golden child brother, who's a potato, and my enabler dad, and he's a potato too. They're just like potato people. They just kind of sit there, burp, they're low energy. And then she has like one friend. So she goes after the enabler, and to like tell the delusional story. And the delusional story that she tells to him is how now she's scared. She's so scared of me. Where a week prior, it was like everything was amazing, and you know, I was so helpful and the greatest thing on earth. But when I decided to cut her off, now she's fearful and she's scared. So she starts telling this delusional story of how now she's fearful of me and she needs to hide and she's scared. And so, of course, the enabler turns into the flying monkey and he comes out. We need to have a talk. Your mom's scared of you and you're always so angry. I'm just, and it's like, it's delusion, because in a normal world, when people have a disagreement, normal people that understand mutual respect, you come to the table, you talk, and you say, hey, let's figure this out. But the narcissist can't do that. That's foreign to them. It's like the narcissist strives to create this homeostasis of their perfect vision of their perfect world, where everyone is just like serves a role. Like the people only are in the narcissist world to serve them. And if you aren't serving them in the role they have given you, I'm the scapegoat and a big energy supply. And since I'm not in that role, now I'm a threat. So that's why the delusional story had to come out. And, of course, she emotionally triggers the enabler. He's already a total emotional puppet. Like, he cries all the time. It's just like, it's really sad, man. The guy has lost his whole spine as far as he's so manipulated by this woman, man. And I'm always like, dude, you have to fucking man it up. Just like have some dignity and like stand up for yourself just once. But he won't do it anyway. So I'm just like, whatever. My whole thing is like with these people and this delusion is they want to suck you in. So it's going to be some big delusional story about how now she's not safe and everyone's freaking out. And I'm just like, oh, okay. I just play dumb. That was my first initial way that I would handle them. And I still do that because I just kind of placate to them. So then, that really didn't work. But what was interesting is, like, a few weeks later, my aunt and uncle come and visit. And my uncle's a raging narcissist, and my aunt is like, she's definitely like a delusional, I think she's a narc. I don't really know her well enough, but she's really bizarre. And they're both like extreme environmental hippie people. Like, they don't have kids, they hate children. They like inherited a bunch of money, so they just travel all over the world, and they wear like clothes from India, and they're like so spiritual. And she's a Sufi priestess. That's her whole thing. And my uncle's like the biggest. Oh, sorry, this train's going. That was awesome. Anyway, so they're like out to lunch for sure. And one thing about them is they're so fake. They don't know themselves. So my narcissist mom can manipulate them so easily. So of course they show up, and this is right after, I cut off the demon narc, and it's like she starts in with the delusional story of how she's not safe, and I'm so mad all the time, and they need to go and the other thing was, I'm keeping my kids from her, as far as I'm not letting my children see her. So that's another thing, which is not true. I mean, honestly, I don't want her to see my kids because she's a demon fuck, but like, I have never once said you can't see your grandchildren. Honestly, I leave the door open for her to invite. She never invites anyone over. The kids never get an invite to come over. So, whatever. If that's on them. But anyway, so she lays into the delusional stories. Of course, it triggers my aunt and uncle, and they're fully manipulated. So they're just like the flying monkeys that come at me and my wife with this phony baloney story. And it's just, they're just trying to suck me in and stir it up. And so of course, I just placate and go, oh yeah, it's too bad. And they're just like throwing all this negative energy at my wife and I. And then after they left, it was like we both decided, yeah, they're never welcome in our home again. They're super rude, and they're just not kind people. But what's interesting about, the tactic with a narcissist story is So, it's manipulation, number one. They're definitely trying to manipulate people. And either in the first instance, she's trying to manipulate someone to get something from them. She's trying to get this guy to feel sorry for her, so he'll do cheap work, whatever. The second is the narc deploys the story as a way of, she's sensing like her world is crumbling. So she uses the story as a weapon to manipulate and to charge these two drones to come at me. And, the goal was to obviously emotionally attack me and then get me to fight back and just get sucked in to the drama. And what's interesting is never once from either of these people, which are so concerned, like this is such a concern for these people, never once did these people want to talk and say, let's figure this out. Let's have a rational conversation where we sit down and talk about this. And that's really interesting because they're not capable of that. And people who have normal emotions and who are emotionally regulated, that makes perfect sense. That's what you do. That's what normal people do to solve problems. You sit down and you have a conversation and you reason out your differences. But not once did these people ever mention that or bring that to the table. And I didn't mention it, bring it to the table, because I was the one being attacked. It really wasn't my place to have to guide these children through some sort of emotional birthing process. You know what I mean? So, it goes to show that the story, weaponizing the story for the narc is one of their main tactics. And, like I said before, they only have so many tricks. And the thing is, they're like a one-trick pony. And they're just going to do the same thing over and over again. And, I think the story is one of the main ones. It's just so powerful, and it probably works every time that they get used to just really dialing it in. And I know from my narc mom that the story has been her main go-to. So I think it's key and really important to get to a point where, I talk about the skill of being, the observer, the silent observer, and you have to be observational, and you have to use critical thinking. And the whole important thing with that skill is you have to learn how to remove your emotions from the situation, and you have to be able to observe and gather the information, and then be able to critically think about it in a non-emotional state. That's using logic, reasoning, critical thinking, and observation. And these are skills that you just work at. You build these skills up, but they're really important to being able to understand and act accordingly to deal with these people. Because, I got to deal with the demon narc mom, but man, I'm dealing with narcissists constantly. They're everywhere. I mean, I'm even dealing with one where this narcissist, I'll tell you about their delusional world. So they live in this world where they've never been challenged, and they're a boomer narc, and so they've never been challenged, and everyone bends to their will. And I've been trying to figure out what kind of narc this person is, because they don't use, they don't do the gaslighting or the triangulation against people. They're very powerful, and they've hammered everyone down into these nothings to where everyone just bends to their will. And they've created this world around themselves where homeostasis in their world is them just throwing temper tantrums, multiple temper tantrums throughout the day, and then just puking the negativity all over everyone, and then ensuring that everyone is suffering with them. And and it's all emotional manipulation. So I guess it is gaslighting. I guess it's a form of gaslighting. Anyway, I'm just kind of reasoning this out on the fly. But what I've observed with this person is, if you don't go along with their program of just falling into line and just taking the beatings and then suffering when they deem, when they're in a bad mood, they want everyone to suffer and just ruin everyone's day, then they go into this victim mode. And they go into this pouty boy victim mode. And this is a boomer, like, grown-ass adult. So it's pouty boy victim. We're like, oh, I'm not getting what I want, and like I'm in a bad mood, and I don't feel good, and I have all these regrets, and they're like pouting and playing the victim when the thing that set them off was, you don't want to participate in their delusional world of like, everyone is miserable, I make everyone miserable, and I just run the show. And whatever kind of narcissist that is, so they start using the story tactic with the enabler to tell the enabler how they're so bummed, they're so sad, and they have all these regrets, and then the enabler comes to the victims in the situation to then make them feel bad and emotionally manipulate them. And it's an interesting tactic where, because this narc wants to get back to the homeostasis, their world is off kilter now because certain people that are in their world aren't participating in their program of misery and chaos and negativity. It's like those people are choosing not to participate. So they have to emotionally manipulate the situation to now be in the victim, the victim of the fact that people aren't playing along with their narc program. Because these narcs, it's like I said with the demon narc mom, is they have their vision of their world, and they work tirelessly to just maintain the vision of their world, and everyone has a role to play. And anytime you step out of that role of, scapegoat, enabler, the helper, whatever it may be, and they're not able to extract, their energy and supply from you, then the warning bell goes off, and they're like, they're not in homeostasis anymore, so they need to do whatever they can to start the manipulation tactics to bring that back in. And that's what this narcissist is trying to do, is playing pouty boy and the victim. Pouty boy victim, emotionally manipulate everyone, so now everyone's like, oh, we feel so bad for you, and whatever we can do, just treat us like shit, and then it'll be fine, and whatever we can do to keep you happy. And I'm just thinking, like, dude, what a delusional fucking turd, to think that, yeah, you can just treat people like shit, everyone will bend to your will, and that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, why do you think people don't want to participate in your fucking world, dude? Like, it's miserable. Like these narcissists, they live in pure misery. The world that they imagine and create is misery. No one wants that. These people, it's like, and then they turn the victim. Oh yeah, pouty boy victim. Give me a fucking break, man. So, the whole thing is once you get the truth and the awareness, and you start studying, and like, dude, it's like, it's ninja mode. You can just see right through these people's bullshit. And the whole thing is they just try to play you and just try to suck you in. And, a lot of the times the strategy you have to figure out for what's going to work for you is you got to figure out, like, is this a short play or is this a long play? And sometimes if it's a short play, playing dumb and placating, and then just really keeping yourself, in a position of like really protecting your emotions is probably the best play. But if you're going to get sucked into this for the long term, I mean, obviously we all know it's zero contact. Just tell these people to piss off and just leave, and just escape, their chaotic, world. That's the best play. But if it's a long play and you have to be around these people for a long period of time, I've talked about before, my wife and I developing this monster method, because we're stuck with dealing with my narc mom and my enabler dad and the golden child brother. Like, we're kind of stuck dealing with them until we can financially save enough money and just get the fuck out. But it takes, it's really just the truth and awareness, and then learning. And once you're there, you can see right through it, and then you can begin reasoning out what you're feeling, because they'll work so hard to emotionally manipulate you. And when you're in it, it's hard to be that observer, but you just have to have, some way to check yourself, whether it's a safe word, or if you have like a partner, a boyfriend, or girlfriend, or just a friend, someone that you can share your feelings with, and then they can help you kind of like break out of that spell, because that emotional manipulation is what puts you under that spell. And then you can start to reason it for yourself, and then it helps bring you back to reality. And you just see through their bullshit, because that's all it is. It's all fake, and it's all made up. And at the end of the day, we hold what we want in ourselves. Like we stay steadfast in the feelings that we want to have. Like, I want to be happy. I want to be productive. I want to be cheerful. I want to be, giving. You are the one who ultimately decides how you want to feel. And if someone is manipulating you emotionally or whatever it may be, and they're playing the victim, don't get it twisted. These people are in the wrong, and you are in the right. And you just got to stay steadfast in how you want to feel. And anytime you're feeling like someone's manipulating you, that's when you're dealing with these types of people. So anyway, the power of these people's story, it's really there, and it's one of their main manipulation tactics. So, prepare yourself. The delusional story will come at you, and ultimately, you can get through it. So we got some waves coming. Anyway, I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.